Hezbollah to distribute it, and Washington and New York will be vulnerable. In other words, Cheney sees what's going on now as a threat to the United States directly. He doesn't view this as simply something that's happening in Western Europe or the Middle East. He is protecting America by taking preemptive or proactive action right now. And so in Lebanon, once Hariri fell and there was a crisis there, we immediately moved to support any group that was against Nasrallah and Hezbollah. And so we've poured a lot of money, illicit money. It was not authorized by Congress. Money went pouring in there. Former retired CIA guys were put in there. Retired people went in there. Other agencies. The funds came. Nobody's quite sure where. There's a lot of pools of black money around. A lot of money, undoubtedly some was, I'm told, came from Iraq. That is, as you know, there were hearings the other week that showed $9 billion in Iraqi oil money mysteriously disappeared and was unaccounted for. Some of that money was washed around. There was also a lot of money found after Saddam fell. We found several caches of huge amounts, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in some cases of cash. We also found money in various ministries. There's no really accountability, and a lot of it could have ended up in black pools. It's just not clear where the money came from, and it's not supposed to be clear. What you do is you wash the money in, you get it to certain people. The government of Lebanon underwrites its internal security people. And what we do know is in the last few years, or less than that, the last year or so, 3 jihadist groups, 3 Sunni, Salafi or Wahhabi, these are the religious sects out of Saudi Arabia. And don't forget, 15 of the 19 guys who went into the building in New York, the 2 towers, were Saudis. And from the extreme religious, almost, they were jihadists from either Salafis or Wahhabis. And we know that the groups now, there are 3 groups similar in character. According to reports I've read, some of the people in these groups were trained in Afghanistan, closely associated with Al-Qaeda. Not everybody. It's a loose network. What you have around the world is these terror groups operated independently of Osama bin Laden. Although it's not clear, they don't have some ways of communicating through the web or what, we're not sure. But these 3 groups, 2 years ago, we would have done everything we could in the United States to arrest them and send them to Gitmo, Guantanamo, or some other place. Instead, we're throwing money into the country, into the government, into the internal security apparatus, and the internal security facilities or mechanisms inside Lebanon are underwriting these groups. As soon as one group came across the border from Syria, were immediately given material, a place to live, arms, and resupplied. There are 3 such groups that are operating, and why are they there? Because in case things go bad in Lebanon, and we end up in a civil war between Hezbollah and its partners in the coalition and the Sunni government, this is a very tough bunch of guys that can handle, we think, the tough guys inside Hezbollah. It's sort of a matching game. And so, in effect, you sleep with the enemy of your enemy is your friend. Bandar, as I wrote in this article, Bandar has assured us that the Salafi groups in Lebanon are okay. Don't worry about them. I think somebody described it to me. He said at one point, I'm a Wahhabi. He's a member of that austere religious sect himself in Saudi Arabia. I can go and pray and then come back from the mosque and sit down and have a business meeting and have a drink. And he said these groups in Lebanon, he told us, are targeted not at America necessarily. They're targeted at Iran, at Hezbollah, at Shias elsewhere, at Syria. That's their prime target, and they're okay. I quote others, including senior people from Saudi Arabia, saying, this is really nutty, because these people are not controllable. So that's where we are in that situation. It's complicated. It's very cynical in a way, and what you have is a major sort of redirection. I had one military friend describe it as failing forward, talking about the failures in Iraq driving this policy. And you got it, kid. And
the U.S. is also funding, supporting, training the Sunni police in Iraq.
Well,
the Shia police
no,
in
here's
Iraq.
The wonderful irony of it, of course, is that after 9/11, after we invaded Iraq, the neoconservatives in Washington wanted nothing to do with the Ba'athist Party. That's Saddam's party. Most of them were Sunnis. Disbanded the Ba'athist Party, disbanded the military. A lot of Sunnis, a lot of Shia in the military too, of course. And threw in our weight with the Shia. Within months, the American intelligence community was raising a lot of questions internally. I was talking to people about this by the late spring of '03. They were trying to tell the White House, you guys are making a big mistake because Iran's the big winner of this war, particularly when we began to see signs of the insurgency. And the Shia are going to support Iran. The Shia are going to go with the Shia of Iran over you. In the neocon mantra, there had been a war between Iran and Iraq for 8 years during the 1980s, a very, very devastating war. Thousands killed in any one set-piece battle. They would just rush each other. And the assumption of the neoconservatives was that the Iraqi Shiites, having fought the Iranian Shiites for so long and so brutally, would be loyal to Iraq. Well, it turned out the Shiite, particularly when the occupation began and the American troops began, like all occupiers, became hated. I don't think there was much we could do. Our activities and the bombing and the violence didn't help, but no matter how we behave, and occupiers historically are always hated. And so once that happened, and we became, the Americans became essentially the 200-octane fuel that drove the resistance, once that began, the Shiite immediately began to work with the Iranians much more. And all of this was ignored by the White House for years because it didn't fit in with their preconceptions.
We're talking to Seymour Hersh, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist for The New Yorker magazine. Don't go away. When we come back from our break, we're going to ask him about this planning group within the Joint Chiefs of Staff that is planning to attack Iran. And he says once it gets the word, it could happen within 24 hours. Stay with us.